You can't deceive me with beautiful words like freedom and independence anymore. Do you realize how many of my comrades died back there?
I don't like you, but I believe we all have the same reasons for fighting. But if you still want to shoot me, do it.
Look, the perfect fusion of Metatron, the destruction to end all!
To be honest, Zone of Enders 2 might be the last reason I'm making this video. It could be me getting hyped for the release of Armored Core 6, or wondering where Stendality is, being sad that Gundam The Witch of Mercury is possibly over, frustrated that Bandai Namco refuses to produce a high-quality single-player story-based Gundam game, or excited by the announcement of Daemon X Machinima Titanic Scion. And lastly, it could be my overall love of the mecha genre and how many references I saw in this game of that beloved genre that made me want to play this. Zone of Enders 2 originally released on February 13th, 2003, had an HD remaster in 2012, then got a 4K remaster in 2018. And between all three versions, the game is available on PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, and PC. This game is the follow-up to the original Zone of Enders that was popularized because it contained a Metal Gear Solid 2 demo, and is infamous for not being very good, or at the very least not as good as its sequel, which is a better game in every way. So as someone who has enjoyed his time with this, let's talk about Zone of Enders 2 and how it's a love letter to the mecha genre. But before we get started, if you enjoy my videos, please like, subscribe, and share my content. Also, if you wish to support my work directly, becoming a YouTube member is the best way to do so. With that being said, thank you for being here, and let's start with the combat. This game can be described as a character action hack and slash and third-person shooter where the player controls a very powerful mech that at its base can attack close range with a blade, shoot from a distance, fly around, dash to increase its speed, and modify your attacks, changing your regular shot into a multi-target homing shot, grabbing that allows you to use enemies or objects in the area as weapons, shields, or projectiles. And the last of these base abilities is Burst, which allows players to charge their close range and long range attacks to break enemy guards or do a lot of damage, at the cost of the sub gauge that can be recharged by defeating enemies, starting a new level, or getting an energy pack. But admittedly, there are so many enemies attacking at any given point, you'll rarely use these burst abilities. But that isn't the end of our combat, because the sub gauge is used for various abilities that are gained through the game, with homing missiles, stun grenades, a decoy that distracts enemies, zero shift, which is a teleport that gives players a short-lived attack boost, and many more. Zone of Enders 2 gives players numerous options to deal with a variety of situations the game places you in, with each tool that's available to you having a genuine use within your playthrough, never getting replaced by something else. There are even situations where your mech will recommend that you use specific abilities, which I found to be a creative way for the game to give players an in-game guide. But before I move on from the combat, I know most of you are wondering, how is the game a character action and hack and slash game? In my opinion, that simply comes down to the level of thought you have to put in when it comes to engaging enemies, with character action requiring a consistent level of thought and engagement across your abilities, enemy pattern recognition, and how to deal with those enemies unless you're on the lowest difficulty. Whereas hack and slash takes all of that out and just allows players to run through enemies for pure enjoyment. But to make this simple, Zone of Enders starts out as a hack and slash, but quickly evolves into a character action game where you have to think about how to deal with encounters in the game, even with normal mobs of robots, leading to situations where you will have to fight in complete darkness, using surrounding enemies to block a boss's attack, and the final boss becoming a test of everything you learned up to that point, giving me some memorable moments in this short game. But let's move on from that that and get into the environment, exploration, and visuals. Zone of Enders 2 is a sci-fi mecha adventure that spans across many different environments, with 4 overarching places being Callisto, a frozen moon near Jupiter, the Deimos space station, Mars, and the space fortress that is at the center of the story, Alman. Among these 4 areas, Mars contains a bulk load of the story. However, the game consistently changes the environment so fast that I never got tired of looking at my surroundings, as you've seen with the footage I've used so far, with snowy climates, arid deserts, a suffocating space station, and a futuristic settlement, the core of a solar system destroying weapon, and many environments in between. However, due to the structure of the game, there isn't much exploration far as I know, with these levels having a couple of alternate paths and then quickly moves on. However, the visuals made me wish I could see more because the presentation was great, with plenty of 3D cutscenes and a few 2D cutscenes that you don't see in a lot of video games anymore, in addition to various cockpit communications between Dingo and others. So with my thoughts summed up, let's move into the story. The story starts with our main character Dingo, who is a former member of the Mars independence group called Barum, is sent to investigate a strong Metatron reading on the moon called Callisto for a mining company he works for. He discovers the orbital frame Jehuti with a consciousness called Ada and fights against Barum, who is attacking the moon looking for Jehuti, eventually defeating the pilot of the R-Jet mech, Ken. Following this, Dingo attacks Barum's orbiting ship so he can draw attention away from Callisto. When he gets on the ship, Dingo encounters the Nephitis mech and the Viola AI, mimicking the main antagonist of the first game, eventually defeating them. After this, Dingo and Jehuti fight the Anubis mech piloted by Noam, the leader of Barum. Unfortunately, Dingo and Jehuti lose. Following this, Noam asks Dingo to rejoin Barum, but he refuses and is shot, but is saved by Ken, who tells Dingo she is a spy for the United Nations Space Force. Ken asks Dingo to help her stop Barum and Noam from getting their hands on Alman, a space fortress that has enough power to destroy solar systems. So Dingo reluctantly agrees after he realizes that he needs Jehuti for life support until Ken can get him a new heart. So they travel to Mars. Then Dingo learns that Ada will self-destruct to destroy Alman if they can't find it and stop it. Then Dingo gets into a scuffle with the protagonist of the first game and Jehuti's original pilot, Leo. After the scuffle, Dingo promises to return Jehuti after destroying Alman. Following this, Dingo battles the Viola AI 2 more times, eventually putting her soul to rest. Then Ken joins Dingo in Jehuti's cockpit. With Ken by his side, Dingo seeks to unlock Jehuti's potential so they can defeat Anubis and Noam. So he seeks out Lloyd, a Barum scientist and father figure. Lloyd agrees to help Dingo if he can defeat him and prove that he's ready to fight Noam. Following this, Noam attacks the base they're in, forcing Dingo to leave Ken and Lloyd behind, leading to Ken getting captured. Later on, Dingo reunites with Leo and convinces the United Nations Space Force to lead an assault against Barum. During this assault, Ada completes the Zero Shift installation, bringing Jehuti to the same level as Anubis. After fighting his way through waves of enemies, Dingo confronts Anubis in the power station and battles him with Leo's help. After a battle with Anubis, Dingo realizes he was fighting a copy with Ken imprisoned inside. Dingo, Ken, Leo, Noam, and their mechs are thrown into a compressed space corridor leading them to Alman. However, despite extensive damage to Jehuti, Dingo defeats the real Anubis. Then they arrive at Phobos' surface where Noam and Anubis enter Alman's core. Dingo fights Noam one last time and kills him, but Alman still activates. This leads Dingo to Alman's core, where he decides to destroy it by throwing the head of Anubis at the core because it's Jehuti's twin machine, meaning that it can stop Alman by exploding as well. After this, Dingo is later rescued along with Leo, Jehuti, the end Ken. After this, Dingo is freed from the machine and he receives medical treatment and a new organic heart and lungs. And in the final score menu, we see him with Ken, showing that he is alive without life support, albeit with a scar across his chest. And that is the end of the story. At this point in the video, I would usually break down the characters within the story and talk about why they're so great while analyzing them, but that would be me trying to force something that isn't there. These characters are on the nose with no depth to be found or expanded upon unless I delve into supporting media of the game, which is something I personally dislike, but can admit for every bad example like Final Fantasy 15 with multiple animated shorts on top of a full-length movie, there are good ones like Final Fantasy 14 with small short stories that add on to characters that are already flushed out. So I want to just say Zone of Enders 2 was definitely made by people who love the mech genre, and it covers the usual themes of the genre like anti-war, human connection, and the boundary between man and machine. There are even little things like Barham and the United Nations Space Force being references to Zeon and the Earth Federation from the original Gundam series, down to the main point of the conflict being the independence of those not living on Earth, which leads into the same thing with characters like Leo being somewhere between Shinji from Evangelion and Amuro Ray from Mobile Suit Gundam, and Nohem, who is a tribute to Given Zabi. To sum it up, Zone of Enders 2 is a game made by Mecha fans for Mecha fans, and should satisfy or hold over anyone until the release of Armored Core 6, that hopefully revives this gaming genre that has fallen to the wayside. And that's what I have to say about the love letter to the mecha genre called Zone of Enders 2. So with that being said, if you enjoy my videos, please like, subscribe, and share my content. Also, if you wish to support my work directly, becoming a YouTube member is the best way to do so. And if you want to see another video essay, that's on screen right now.